Welcome to Coffee and Contemplation. I'm Robin, and today we're doing something a little different. I recently had the very great privilege to be a guest co-host on another Stranger Things podcast. I think that's one of the things I have found the most rewarding about this whole project. Everything involved with podcasting is getting to know other podcasters and other people in the community, in the fandom. So this was a really cool opportunity. I was very, very honored to be invited to participate in the Ham Radio podcast hosted by Ashley. She kind of gave me my choice of where to begin and what to discuss. So of course, naturally, I opted for chapter 4, Dear Billy. So I'm going to play a little bit of that for you, and at the end, I'll circle back with you and tell you exactly where you can listen to the rest of it. Enjoy.
Can you tell everybody why you specifically want to talk about chapter 4?
I mean, this is the one everybody wants to talk about, right? I mean, the power of the running up the hill sequence. I still kind of struggle for words to really, which kind of makes a lot of, obviously we will come up with words because that's the whole point of what we're doing here today. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that it's just some of the best. I even would go so far as to say that sequence is probably some of the best television I think I've ever seen. The writing, just every single aspect of filmmaking just firing on all cylinders. That's great. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think that this episode is a quintessential example of that. Stranger Things has a lot of moments that do that. And I think that's what certainly draws me to the show as a whole. But this episode, man, yeah, it's like the prime example of that.
I agree. Like for me, the fourth episode of each season is always usually my favorite of the season. And this one kind of does remind me a lot of the Sauna Test, which was season 3's chapter 4, because it's a pivotal moment. It's a pivotal episode in the season. And again, like you mentioned, the cinematography when Max enters Vecna's mindscape, and just because we had never seen that before in the show, and just the way they were able to pull that off. And also, Dacre Montgomery wasn't even physically there with Sadie Sink when they were filming that part when she sees Billy. Like, he was still in Australia because of COVID and everything. He didn't want to come back to the States. So I think he said something like, Sean Levy, who directed this episode, like did it over Zoom, like showing him what to do and stuff. And I mean, obviously they used a body double when she was in there with him, but the way they were still able to play that off without him physically being there, I thought was fantastic editing work. And like the directing of this episode was probably my favorite in this season.
I really do like Sean Levy as a director. I like a lot of his films. I think a lot of us probably as Stranger Things fans probably all saw Free Guy precisely because he was directing it and because Carrie was in it. But like, I think that he as a director I think he is so good at a lot of the like one-on-one, like close character interactions, but he loves spectacle. And I think that sometimes I would say the Adam Project was something that I think struggled with balancing the two, but like most of the time, like I think this is another great example of like when he's able to balance the two effectively, he does it so well.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and he also directed Night at the Museum, which it's like all his projects are like his own, and you never really think this guy produces and directs episodes from Stranger Things because it doesn't really look, the same, which, I mean, it's the Duffer Brothers, brainchild, but I mean, the episodes he directs each season are like some of the best in the season. So, you want to talk real quick about like things you really enjoyed about this episode?
I mean, obviously the running up the hill sequence is like kind of the real, that's the like real meat of the episode. But the sequence at the very beginning when Max is explaining what's happening to her, the way that Sync balances the fear, the pragmatism, the frustration, the anger, and also the like, I don't really even fully know what I'm saying. Like the way she definitely handles all of those emotions at once is just insane. Like it's so good. So I actually really like the way that sequence kind of comes together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a small detail, but I also love that when Lucas gets to the school, that he's exhausted still, but he immediately is like, Dustin, they're coming for you. Like he's still so concerned for Dustin. I just think that's really sweet. I love little moments like that. The shootout as well. Like they'll get scenes like that will get flack for, oh, the guy doesn't reload or whatever, but that agent reloads several times, which is like really impressive. And that he's like balancing, like where everybody is, and he's thinking about where everybody, where the kids all are. Like I was truly sad when he died. I was really sad about that. It was cool to see them utilize a oneer, but in a different style than they have before. So I thought that was really cool.
I liked in this episode that Max, and when she knew her time was coming to an end, there was still like, she still had that Max humor, when she's like, if you think I'm gonna spend it could be the last day of my life in that armpit, this Mike Wheeler's basement, I know a good lawyer. And I mean, I just loved that, she was still Max, even though, and also I really did like her writing the letters to everybody, because it's like, what would you do in that situation if you knew you're going to die in less than 24 hours? How would you handle it? I think we would all say, well, we would try to send our last goodbyes to our loved ones. Without 11 being in this episode, it did give Max and the others not only their moment to kind of shine, but for all of the audience to be completely invested into what is happening with Max. Like, she is going to die here, and I think if we had 11 in there, even if it was just us seeing her ride to the Nina project site, I don't think we would have been as invested in what was going on with Max, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think the surrounding episodes are very 11 heavy. And I would also say, like, because something I noticed was that Eddie's not in this episode either. And preparing for this episode, I actually hadn't rewatched the beginning of season 4 because I was really still feeling pretty raw about the end. So it was going back to the beginning. I was actually reminded of how much I enjoyed the beginning of the season. And so yeah, same kind of deal. It's like Eddie's not in the episode, but I don't think the episode suffers from like the absence of Eddie or Elle. It allows them to have this moment. Like the focus is very centered on them. And I think that works.
Yeah, because this episode was really when we see the stakes have been raised, not just in Hawkins, but, in California as well, because, before in episode 5, we found out about the Nina Project and why these men came and shot up the buyer's home. But, originally Mike and company were just they just wanted to leave to go back to Hawkins. The plan in episode 4 is not to go get 11. It's to go back to Hawkins. They don't, decide to rescue her until episode 5 when they learn about the Nina Project and stuff. And I thought it was really good to see, still like their desperation to get out of there, something so innocent as ordering a pizza so that they can leave, and then, unexpected company shows up, and then, they get shot at, and then they have to leave, and yet no one is chasing after them, but they just end up in the middle of nowhere. And I really loved that entire sequence in the house.
Yeah.
And then,
it's surprisingly strong. Yeah. Even with the comedic beats, like, I mean,
drive.
I mean, I love Argyle. I'm so happy that Argyle is part of that crew. Like, I adore Argyle. I really hope he comes back for season 5. I'm not sure that he will, but I would be very delighted if he returns, because
Yeah.
I Eduardo Franco in the role, he is a delight.
Yeah. So, was there anything you disliked about the episode, or just if you had the opportunity to change it, you would?
Very rarely am I like, I just want to skip through something. A lot of the stuff with Joyce and Murray and Yuri, it was sort of like, let's get on with it. Let's just, and that was a weird feeling to have. And I do feel like it does take some brownie points away from how good the episode, from how much of a flow there is for the rest of the episode. There's so much else that's happening. I feel like to say it drags it down is a little strong. I want to get back to the other stuff. Like, I'm not enjoying this.
Yeah.
Like, just get to Russia, just get Hopper. Let's go.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, that's one thing that really, really bothered me about this episode in particular, is because, everything else, in the Hawkins and with, out in California, it was like, speeding up, so fast, and it was like, oh, we're really getting somewhere here, it's great. And then they would jump back to Hopper and Russia, or with Murray and Joyce, and it was like, I mean, this is good, and it was like, we're in quicksand now, because it's just like, it's so slow. There's nothing happening here. And I felt like it did take out some of the pace a little bit. And then it was kind of frustrating because, Hopper, and like when he escaped, it's like, finally, thank God, it's like, we're finally going to get him home. We don't have to worry with this crap anymore. And then Yuri betrays everyone, and they come back for Hopper and take him back. And I was like, oh my gosh, we were so close.
Yep.
And I mean, I knew that's why they wrote it that way. They wanted us to have that feeling, but also, I find it very hard to believe that Murray Bauman would have just drank tea randomly from this random Russian guy he just met. I didn't really like that part, but I'm like, whatever.
That is an excellent point. I know that it bothered me that they drank the coffee, but you make an excellent point. Like, of course, Murray would never have done that. He would have been like, Joyce, don't accept anything. But I feel like I hated it the first time through. Yeah, like, it was like, why did we go through this whole escape attempt just to have him end up right back in the prison? And I guess functionally it is to get him from being just like out working, with everybody else, to getting him into that specific part of the prison where then they're going to be fodder for the Demogorgon. But at the same time, it's sort of like, why not just start? Like, why did we have to go through the whole escape attempt? And don't get me wrong, I actually kind of enjoy that whole bit. I really like the contrast between Dmitri or Antonov and Yuri, because Dmitri is like invested in Hopper getting away. Like, he's paying attention, and it's not just from that same like sort of snarky, like, oh, I wonder if he'll make it. Like, he seems invested in Hopper making it, which I think is like supposed to be almost involuntary. But I like that, and I like that creates a really nice setup for them continuing to become friends over the rest of the season. But it felt like they kind of, because of the corner they sort of wrote themselves into at the end of season 3, well, we got to get Hopper out of Russia. How do we do that? So it felt like it was very plotting some of the time. Like, well, we have to get them there. It felt like a lot of we're checking boxes. We're just getting to this place, and we don't really have any other option. Because I could feel the struggle that must have been in the writer's room of like, we can't just wave the magic wand and have Hopper back in Hawkins. Like, we can't do that. I think I think the viewers, myself included, would have felt cheated if it was like, well, then what did we go through all that for? But at the same time, they want to keep it, because they want to keep it grounded. Yeah, it did feel a little bloated, shall we say.
Them writing themselves into a little bit of a corner. That's, one of the biggest problems I had with season 3 was, please don't do this to yourselves. Like, unless you back this up next season, or write something incredible that justifies this, like, you're going to open up a can of worms that you eventually have to eat. and it ain't gonna taste very good. Actually, the Russia plot is actually one of the most or more controversial things about this season, because everyone seems to kind of agree on the same thing. It's too slow, it was too drawn out, and there was really nothing that really happened. And at the end, it kind of left everyone scratching their heads going, so you send Hopper out there just be a prisoner and be tortured, and then you wanted to do a gladiator thing with the Demogorgon, and then you say, oh yeah, and by the way, the Russia plot, like, they know that everything's connected across the world, and if we just do this, we're going to help the kids. And now Hopper is no longer an alcoholic and a pill popper, which is great, nothing wrong with that, but it's like, you didn't have, if that was your plan, you didn't have to do all that. You could have maybe had Hopper at the end of season 3 go into the witness protection program or something.
I like that, like, in this chapter, like, when Dimitri's on the phone with Yuri and you hear him getting captured, I was really like invested and like worried about, is he about to get like dragged into a room and we never see him again? And I'm really happy that didn't happen, because I like him a lot. So that is going to conclude this little sample, this little preview of my conversation with Ashley on Ham Radio Podcast. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, it's all up right now as of this being posted, and the link is in the show notes. But Ham Radio is on Spotify, so yeah, go check it out and go give the rest of the podcast a listen, especially since we're sort of on a bit of a quasi hiatus right now over here. But please, if you do have thoughts and questions and feelings about season 4, I'd love to hear them. I would love to be able to work in more listener feedback into the next season. I don't know exactly when I'll be back with the breakdowns, but they are coming. That is a promise. And honestly, here's a question for you that I would love to hear your thoughts on. What have you been listening to, watching, checking out, revisiting now that Stranger Things 4 is out, it's done? Are you doing a massive rewatch of the show? Are you listening to other Stranger Things podcasts that you really enjoy? I myself have been checking out Ham Radio. I've also been listening to Stranger Still, another Stranger Things podcast, and that's pretty awesome. So yeah, like, what are your holdovers until we get season 5? Give me all the recommendations. If you are just still continuing to rewatch Stranger Things over and over and over again, like I said, I would love to hear what you're thinking and how you're feeling about it. Hopes for season 5, all that good stuff. All right, thanks for listening, and be sure to check out the Ham Radio Podcast, including the rest of this episode. And until next time, over and out.